I want to start out first by saying I appreciate being invited to join you here today. There's one thing I've learned from the males in my family. There's a real challenge to batting cleanup, as they call it. You never know just exactly how much time you're going to have to do your presentation. So I'm going to have to talk really fast because I think we've already kind of run over the time that we have available. But I did want to let you know that the polling that we have done here that we're presenting was done by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare Foundation. It is not unique. We have done similar polls. This one was done by the University of New Hampshire because their survey center is nationally known as a nonpartisan academic public opinion research center. It conducts polls for the Boston Globe, and they have in the recent years conducted political polls for CNN, Fox News, USA Today, Philadelphia Inquirer, pretty much everybody under the sun. But we have also done polls and focus groups with groups like Celinda Lake, and we're not the only ones. A number of other groups have done similar kinds of work. What you will find is that within a couple of percentage points, basically the margin of error, we're all finding the same results. So there's really nothing unique about this particular set of material. It was done by an entity that we selected because we didn't want to be accused of having some kind of bias. And the reasoning that we decided that we wanted to do this poll was because we know that historically Americans love Social Security. There's no doubt in anyone's mind about that. The National Committee itself is a senior organization. We have over 3 million members and supporters. They come from all walks of life. In fact, we're pretty evenly split between Democrats, Republicans, and Independents ourselves. But they all band together, and the reason is because they are passionate about protecting Social Security and Medicare, not just from themselves, but also for their children and their grandchildren, for future generations. This is very frustrating sometimes to hear organizations like ours characterized as ones that are just about old people taking care of themselves. Most of our members really care about this program for their kids. We found that out particularly during the Bush privatization years because our members, as our President Barbara Kennelly went around the country doing events on privatization, the people that were in the crowd, the people that were the most vocal, the most adamantly opposed to privatizing the program, knew that the privatization that the President was proposing at the time was not going to affect them. This was not about protecting their benefits. It was not about protecting their wallets. It was about looking at their children, who at that point were in their 30s or 40s, and their grandchildren, and knowing that these younger generations, for the most part, don't understand the value of the program because, of course, they've got kids, they've got education, they've got homes, they've got a lot of other things they're worried about. I have to tell you, their retirement is one of the last things that they're thinking about when they're in their 30s. But the older generations know how important these two programs are going to be for them, and they were the ones that were out there on the front lines making sure that the program didn't get privatized. We're finding the same kinds of things now. However, the one thing that we were concerned about was, because of the deficit situation, we wanted to find out whether people's attitudes had changed. Had people suddenly begun buying this argument that because of the financial situation that the country's in, we can't afford Social Security? And that was primarily what was driving our decision to begin this work last fall. We began with focus groups, we did one round of polling, and then we did this particular round of polling later on in the spring. So what we have discovered in this process is that, in fact, people's opinions about Social Security have not changed. And it is interesting because we have found that this does not just limit itself to the older generations, it is across the board. Now, I will also mention the version of the PowerPoint that I'm going to go through today that you have in your hands is a shorter version of the study that we did. A more extensive version is available both on the National Committee's website and on the National Committee Foundation's website, and you're free to go through that as you want. One of the things we discovered was that the vast majority of people, not surprisingly, know about the deficit. I was actually a little surprised that there were so many people that hadn't heard very much about it, considering the fact that it seems to be on the news cycles 24/7. But you do have a significant number of the population that know we have a financial problem as a country. However, when they were asked the open-ended question, what do you think the problem is? What do you think caused this deficit? We turned out with only 2% of the people, that little red number, who pegged it as being a problem with Social Security. That is about the same number that thought NASA was the problem. Okay, so there were a lot of other things that people identified. Social Security was not up at the top of their list. So it flows as a natural connection that they didn't think Social Security should be cut to deal with the deficit problem. If you have something that's not causing a problem, you don't shrink it in order to take care of the problem, and the American public understands that. There were 77% of the people who took the position that Social Security should be left alone. And in fact, if you look at the breakouts, you can see the national averages up front. It crossed party lines. It crossed age groups. We also found it crossed income demographics. We polled different parts of the country. It made no difference whether you were from a red state or a blue state or a purple state or some other state. People did not believe that Social Security should be cut in order to reduce the deficit. In fact, we got the same comparable levels of results when we asked the question, well, do you think it should be cut to strengthen its own finances? And we found we got similar results. People do not believe Social Security should be cut.